Hi, I'm Sarah, and at 17, I was the new girl in a super prestigious school. This sudden move wasn't down to anything bad. It's not like I hated my old school or anything, but just like a winning lottery ticket that my father spent his amazing career to get. You see, my dad was a firefighter, and last summer there was a fire that completely burned down this mansion. My dad knew there was someone still in there, so he ignored all his teammates' warnings, then went into the burning building to rescue them alone. He found a girl around my age trapped in her room and rushed in to rescue her. But as he hugged the girl and ran out of the fire, a burning wooden beam fell on his leg. That was when my hero dad used his incredible strength he had left to get rid of it and carried the girl out of the building. Once he went out and checked if the girl was safe, he collapsed in his comrade's arms. He'd saved her life, but he was left with a pretty bad injury on his leg, which meant he couldn't do his job anymore. Being a fireman was all his life. He was so devastated that I couldn't even recognize him, until an unexpected fortune came to our family. The owner of the mansion, Mr. Adams, came to our front door one day. He was so grateful to my dad for saving his daughter's life that he offered him anything he wanted. Mr. Adams is a super wealthy businessman, but my dad didn't want his money. But there was one thing he agreed on. There's this private school. Well, it's not just any private school. It's where kids of politicians, celebrities, and big business tycoons go. Mr. Adams organized for me to go there too. OMG, it was so crazy. I'd be in the same class as the kids of A-list celebrities. I was so worried if I could fit in that new environment. But Mr. Adams said that his daughter Ashley went there too, and she would help me a lot. And I could see how happy my dad was after a long, devastating time. So, yes. My first day of school was so different than I imagined. Ashley had to delay going back to school for a month because she still hadn't recovered all her skin damage yet. So I ended up going alone. So, wow, this school was amazing. Seriously, take luxury and times it by about 100. Even the lockers were super expensive looking. I was afraid that if I scratched it, there was no way my parents would be able to afford the repairs. Not only were the facilities out of this world, but the students there were something else too. They looked so classy in stylish and expensive clothes. Even though the school had a uniform, it seemed like the only one wearing it was, well, it was me. Ugh, as bad as the uniform was, the thought of showing up in my cheap casual clothes was far worse. When I entered the classroom, everyone stared at me and looked me up and down. Then this glamorous girl walked over to me and said, "So, who are your parents, newbie?" I froze. I didn't expect this to be her first question, but it said a lot. Obviously, status here was important, so I knew that telling them my father was just a firefighter who would quit his job due to an injury, and I was here as a reward for his sacrifice, wouldn't cut it. I blurted out, "Mr. Adams." "Now where can I sit?" All of them were surprised. Another girl showed me an empty space at the front table. Looking at their attitude, I guessed Mr. Adams had been a very famous man in their world. The other girls stayed out of my way after that, but I could feel this one girl's glaring eyes on me. I knew I wasn't done with her. The next day, when I was by my locker, she came over with her group of friends and said, "Newbie, I know you're lying. Mr. Adams only has one daughter, Ashley, and she's my friend." Oh, no. This wasn't good. I tried to remain calm and replied, "I'm more than his daughter. He owes me and my family." They all looked surprised as I walked off, but hey, I didn't lie. He really does owe my family. If they happen to think this is down to debt or power, well, then that's not my fault, is it? That was not all. This school had some weird rules. It doesn't have regular high school clubs like music, chess, or cheerleading. Nope. Here, it's all down to status. There's a club for the celebrity kids, a club for the politicians' kids, and so on. I found this strange. Could no one here be themselves without clinging onto their parents' fame? Anyway, one week into school, and I was told that I had to attend my club meeting after school. Oh, so they themselves put me in a child of something family group. I didn't want to be classified as a dissident by themselves, too, so I reluctantly go to the hall to attend. I sat at the back of the room. It seemed to be a club for business tycoons kids. Geez, it was so boring. So boring, in fact, that I was pretty sure the kid sitting next to me was sleeping. A boy whose dad owns one of the mega big companies droned on about how his father donated millions to the school. Worse still, everyone clapped and cheered him as if he'd saved the world or something. After half an hour of this fakeness, I'd had enough. So, glided past the sleeping guy so I could escape. But being the clumsy girl I am, I accidentally knocked his earphone jack slip out. Cue the loudest rumbling of music. Oops. The boy sat up and calmly turned off his music. I was still standing there with everyone looking at me when Mauve said, "Sarah, isn't it? Are you going somewhere? At least you should tell us what your family has done for this school. Or you think you can just enjoy the perks of this club?" Confused, I blurted out, "It's not like I need all this drama anyway." "Oh, is that so?" Mauve glared at me. I was about to gather up my stuff and hurry out of there when the guy beside me stood up and said, "She's right. No one cares about your dumb perks. This club is so boring it actually sent me to sleep." The room fell silent. This boy pulled me out of there. Wow. Who was this boy to say such a thing? I have to admit, I was kinda impressed, but also shocked. Out in the foyer, he turned to me and said, "I'm Noah. It's nice to meet an interesting girl like you." OMG! This Noah boy was so handsome. Before I could even think up a reply, he turned around and walked off. And wait, had he just said that I was interesting? Anyway, I didn't need any friends here. They all seemed so fake. All I needed to do was put my all into my studies and make the most of the education on offer here. The best class for me by far was art, and more specifically, plaster making. I loved creating plaster figures. I just got so absorbed into the art of it. Once I was working on my sculpture when this girl called Claire came up to me and whispered, "Are you on your period? Come with me to my locker if you need clothes to change into." I looked down at my skirt, and yep, she was right. Of course, I didn't have a backup outfit. Seeing me flustered, she suddenly took her Chanel tweed jacket off and tied it around my waist. Oh my God, what if I got it dirty? My panic continued when I saw inside of her locker. Wow, all of the items in there must have cost at least 4 digits. She grabbed this pretty dress, then pushed me toward the toilets. I changed into the dress. I'd never worn anything so expensive before. I stepped out of the cubicle, and she smiled and said, "You look amazing. I knew this color would complement your skin tone." Turns out that not only did she know loads about fashion, but she was also the sweetest girl. After that, I grew closer to Claire, but there was one thing I didn't understand. Why didn't an amazing girl like Claire have any other friends? One time during lunch, I asked her this, and she replied, "My mom's a famous actress, but she was afraid having me would affect her career, so she had me in secret. So here, I'm a nobody. But it's okay, because now I have you, and my amazing clothes, of course." Claire had shared her secret with me, so it seemed only fair that I shared mine. So I told her all about my dad and why I was really at this school. She hugged me and told me my dad was a true hero and I deserved my place at the school, far more than any of the other kids. It felt good having Claire to confide in, and was proof to me that not all the kids at this school were brats. Then one day, I walked into the class to see this pretty girl sitting at my table. Loads of kids surrounded her like she was royalty or something. She caught my eye and rushed over and hugged me and said, "I'll be forever grateful for what your father did for me. I'm so happy to have you as a sister, Sarah." It turns out that she was Ashley, the daughter of Mr. Adams. She invited me to have lunch with her, and I didn't want to be rude. I mean, it was Ashley's first day back and all. I spotted Claire alone on our usual table, and she looked sad when she saw where I was. I was going to ask Ashley if she could join us, but then I noticed that Claire had already left the cafeteria. I felt so out of place, as all they talked about was business news and their previous vacations to luxury hotels and private islands. Then suddenly this handsome boy came over and sat down next to Ashley. Wait, I recognized him. It was that Noah kid. Then he looked at Ashley and said, "Hey, long time no see." "Oh, he speaks," another girl said. "I was beginning to think you only want to know us when Ashley's around." Noah replied, I have stuff I need to ask this girl. Another girl joked. Stuff involving a fiancé and his bride-to-be, is it? They all laughed, and I saw Ashley turn bright red. Then she turned to me and said, Sarah, this is Noah, my boyfriend. And Noah, this is Sarah, the girl my father has told you about. What? He's her boyfriend? I looked in his direction, and our eyes met. Hey, Sarah here again. So thanks to my hero father, I'd been transferred to a private school where all the rich and famous people's kids went. It was so amazing to study at this luxurious school, but the one downside was I felt like such an oddball there until Ashley, the girl whose life my father had saved, came back to school and was super friendly to me. Also, there was this one boy who caught my eye called Noah. He seemed so rebellious, but kind of friendly and normal to me somehow. But then, shocker, I found out he was Ashley's boyfriend. After introducing us, Ashley spotted Noah looking at me in a weird way and surprisingly said, Oh, so you guys know each other, huh? He muttered out, Yes, I saw this girl once in the club. What club was it? I couldn't remember the name of the club either, so I just sat there smiling awkward. Ashley replied, Oh, right, then stroked Noah's arm. To be honest, I felt kind of disappointed learning the fact that Noah and Ashley were a couple. Because, I did think about Noah a lot since the day I first met him. He stood up to save me from the awkward situation. Then he even said that I was interesting. And yes, this guy was beyond handsome. But what was I thinking? This world is not for me. I should just live quietly, focus on my study, then leave with a good profile for college admissions. Nothing more. After that, I didn't see much of Noah around school. Well, at least I didn't until we ended up in the same new drawing class. In the very first study, our teacher arranged for us to have a trip to a local art museum so we could have first impressions with modern art. I wandered off and studied the different paintings. Then a painting caught my eyes and made me stop to look at it. It was of a wildfire. At first glance, I noticed the off-balanced color scheme and layout. Moreover, in the scene of the fierce fire, destruction, and death, I sympathized with the creatures running away from the fire. My heart suddenly lightened as I thought about the courage of my father. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. Looks intense, huh? The fire which enlightens is the same fire which consumes. I turned around, feeling a little surprised when I saw Noah. Then I smiled. You know Henry Emile? I've read some of his books. I blurted out, Wow, you don't look like someone who likes to read about philosophy. Ugh, talk about a cringy comment. But Noah just smiled and said, So, you like his painting? Yeah. My life has turned to a new page just because of a fire. After that, we analyzed the special features of the painting, and turns out, as well as being cute, he's pretty smart too. Then I looked up and saw him looking at me. I don't know, perhaps it was because we felt the same way about the painting, but I found myself feeling a special connection toward him. Since he kept looking at me like that, I pretended to cough, and then Noah stroked my head and walked away. Oh dear, what did he just do? My heart was beating so fast and my face turned as red as a tomato, but then I just told myself that a pat on the head may mean nothing to him, right? Still, that night I couldn't stop thinking about him. Maybe he liked me. But no! I dismissed that thought. He was with Ashley, so I mustn't think about this anymore. The next morning at school, I was working on my plaster statue when suddenly someone swiped it. I watched in horror as it fell to the ground and lay there in a squashed-up mess. Oh, sorry, a girl said in a sarcastic tone. It's like you don't need all this drama and stuff around you. Geez, I recognized her. It was that mauve girl, the one who hosted my former club. Are you obsessed with me that much? Leave me alone. I fumed while sitting there trying to save the shape of my statue. Oh, it's not that easy, babe. Let me tell you the first perk of our club, living in peace. All of her friends laughed along while Mauve stepped up, aiming at my statue again. At that moment, another voice piped up from the back of our class. Do you want me to smash up yours too? Or are you going to apologize properly to her? That's when I saw Noah standing next to Mauve's statue, wobbling it back and forth. Noah, why do you keep protecting her? Is she important to you? You just need to know that if you keep causing trouble to her, you'll have me to answer. Then he continued to wobble the statue and said, Now, it's your call. Fine, I'm very sorry. She rolled her eyes at me before she stormed over to her statue. Noah stopped wobbling it, then walked over to me and tried to help me with my statue. His clumsiness just made the shape getting worse, but made my heart melted before my mind could help it. Sorry, seems like I ruined this thing more than she did. He looks at me with guilty eyes. No, you're helping me to make a fresh start instead of fixing it. He just laughed. We have to start too, Sarah. Do you see their angry eyes? We're in the same boat now. I looked over his shoulder to see the girls were fuming. But wait, Ashley was there too, and she looked not so happy. She walked over to me, hugged Noah around the neck, and said, Noah, I'm hungry. Can we go to the canteen? Then she turned back to give me a dirty look before they left. That look was her warning. For me. Okay, I definitely needed to keep my distance from Noah from now on. She had her reason for doing so, I could understand. Noah had never cared about anything at school, but now he even made friends with me. That must make her feel insecure. The problem was I just seemed to keep running into him. Speaking of which, after school I was getting my bike when he appeared. Feeling flustered, I thanked him again for earlier. He replied, Don't just say thank you. How about a coffee? Things with Ashley were hostile enough, so I replied, Sorry, Noah, I have a family thing. And also, it's a little awkward with, Ashley, don't you think? At first, he looked confused, but then he shrugged, said, Okay, then walked off. Noah was such a sweet guy, but staying away from him was for the best, right? Besides, Claire had asked me to go over to her house to try out some of the new items that she just designed. We ate pizza, watched a movie together, and looked at the collection that she just finished. She photographed me in some of the clothes, and I posed like a professional model. We had so much fun. I had an amazing friend that was enough for high school life. No more other feelings, no more drama. But one day not long after that, when I was walking through the hallway at school, suddenly someone pulled my hand. Turns out it was Noah. He pulled me to the emergency exit and said, Sarah, stop being friends with Claire. She's not real. At first I was quite surprised, but then I cleared my throat. You are not telling me who I can be friends with. I'm not a kid. Then he took his phone out and showed me the pictures of me wearing Claire's clothes. Huh? Why did he have these pictures? I said, So what? She had my permission to take these photos. But not for posting them on the forum. Your pics hit 1 million likes. What if you become famous? They will find out you're just a daughter of... He hesitated. I was startled as he said that. He must have known my secret. Noah showed me Claire's post. She posted my pictures on the Creative Fashion Forum to promote the outfits she designed with the message, Even ugly ducklings can turn into swans when wearing these. Oh my God. What did she mean by that? In a detailed description, she even added my story, telling that my family was poor but my firefighter father still chose to risk his life to save others. We are not poor, and that was my secret. How could she use that to get people's compassion? She turned out to be worse than the others. She used me and laughed at me behind my back. Seeing my worried face, Noah reassured me that his family's company had signed a contract with Claire, so the photos would be removed from the forum soon according to the company's regulations. He saved me again, and this time it was from my best friend here, my only friend. I trusted her and told her all of my secrets, but turns out I was just a joke to her. From that day on, I avoided Claire. I didn't bother to confront her because I knew she would just try to fake her way out of it. One day I was sitting in the cafeteria with Ashley and a group of friends. Claire came to our table and said she wanted to talk to me. I was annoyed and didn't want to talk to her, so I ignored her. Claire looked confused and grabbed my arm and said, Please, Sarah, I want to know what's going on. I shrugged her off and continued to ignore her. Seeing that, Ashley immediately stood up in a sarcastic tone, said, Sorry, there's no private talk in this group. Then she looked at Claire. Oh, wait, you don't belong here. That's when the other girls in the group laughed at Claire. She just stared at me, but I ignored her. I was still really mad at her. She ended up bursting into tears and running off. After Claire left, Ashley stood up and said, Even a girl like Claire dares to hurt Sarah. That's totally unacceptable. So this weekend, my parents are away, so I'm throwing the party of the year. It's dedicated to Sarah. My family totally owes her, and I want the whole school to know that. So make sure you're all there. Wow, she was having a party in my name. I just wanted a quiet life, but maybe I did need this, so others could at least leave me alone. After everyone finished lunch and left, Ashley pulled me aside and whispered, "Hey, everyone's supposed to wear a costume. It's just a tradition of ours, royal kids." She winked at me, then left. I was freaking out about what to wear, but turns out I didn't need to worry. As soon after that, I received a parcel from Noah with the message, "To shine at the party." Noah was so kind to be this thoughtful, but honestly, I didn't feel very comfortable when he treated me this way. Anyway, I opened the box and saw Wonder Woman's suit. This costume was so beautiful, and I loved it. That night, I put on the costume and did my hair and makeup. I felt so awesome in my outfit and couldn't wait to go to the party and see everyone else's outfits. However, when I followed the staffs and walked in, I saw that all the other girls were in trendy dresses. What? What was going on? Why was no one else dressed up? I stood there in panic when I heard someone say, "Ew, our Wonder Woman has arrived." The other girls laughed frantically. Then they gathered around me and pulled me out into the middle of the room. I looked around to find Ashley, but the more I tried to look, the more terrified I got. They were all staring and laughing at me. I blushed in embarrassment. This was so humiliating. I couldn't believe that I was being pranked again by everyone in the school. I was about to run out of that party when the loudspeakers sounded on stage. "Hey, Sarah here. So I thought that the kids at my school were finally starting to accept me. Ashley had invited me to her party. Not only that, but she dedicated it to me. Then Noah sent me this awesome Wonder Woman costume to wear it. I showed up at the party feeling great, but then my mood soon changed when I realized I was the only one there in a costume. The crowd gathered around me so I couldn't run away. I felt so humiliated and lonely. I didn't belong here. I felt foolish for ever thinking that I did. I searched the crowd for at least one friendly face but couldn't find one. This was awful. I knew I needed to get out of this nightmare right now. I desperately searched for the nearest exit and was about to push my way through the crowd to get to it. But then the big monitor behind me let out a crash sound, and I heard the crackling of flames. I looked back and saw that a shadow puppet show was playing on the monitor. I stared in shock at the familiar scene in front of me. There was a mansion on fire, and then a firefighter burst into it and carried a young girl out. Then he collapsed in his comrade's arms. I watched as they showed another girl standing next to the fireman. She leaped up and down as money fell on her. I knew that the girl was meant to be me, and that Ashley was behind this. She was the only one who knew the story well enough and the only one who could show the play here. The show went on, and I watched as a young man entered the frame with the young girl, and they kissed. Suddenly, the other girl came back on the screen and pulled the young man away from her. Then they ran off together. The ending scene was the young girl sitting alone and crying. The crowd booed and hissed at the screen. I stood there frozen. This was nonsense. I'd never stolen her boyfriend. Ashley must have misunderstood me, and this was going too far. Well, actually not far enough for her. As to my horror, the show continued. Ashley appeared in front of the screen with her microphone. Suddenly, the spotlight was on me, and at the same time, Ashley said, "Here she is, our real-life villain. Although it seems like she still thinks she's a hero. How could she do this to me? I trusted her and thought we were friends." All eyes were on me. They whispered, pointed, laughed, and threw dirty looks at me. I wiped my tears and tried to escape from the toxic crowd. That was when I bumped into Noah. Ashley might have misunderstood me, but how could Noah help her with that plan? What he did was far worse. I glared at him and said, "Thanks for the costume. Are you satisfied now?" He called my name and tried to say something, but all I cared about was getting out of there. It was the darkest day of my life, and I would never return to that school for monsters. No way. I explained to my mom what had happened, but I asked her to keep it a secret from Dad as I didn't want to upset him further, as he was still recovering from his injuries. So we told my dad that I was struggling with the work at the new school because I'd started so late. He supported me no matter what, but I know it kind of made him disappointed that I'd missed such a golden chance. I'm the daughter of the bravest firefighter. I will do my best to make him proud. I returned to my old school and realized how calm that world was in comparison to the rich kids' school. The only thing I did miss about that place was the plaster sculpture class. But it's okay. As I asked the art teacher for permission to start a plaster modeling club, she agreed, and I pinned the info on the notice board. No one seemed interested in it, but whatever. I was just happy that I could continue to make plaster models. The small club room was like a private domain, until one day Ben showed up. He walked in and asked, "Is anyone here?" At first this confused me, but then I noticed the tools in his hands and realized that he wanted to join the club. I smiled and said, "Yes, me and Genevieve. Welcome to our club." It turned out that Ben was a master at this, and he showed me loads of tips and tricks. Together, we nurtured our dreams of going to the same art college and being able to open an exhibition of our own. He was so sweet. He always bought us snacks to share, never got annoyed if I asked him to explain something multiple times, and he was a great listener. I really liked having Ben as a friend. But the one downside was being around him reminded me of Noah. I know he turned out to be a jerk, but I couldn't deny the fact that I'd liked him a lot. Then one time in club, things got awkward. Ben showed up with a bag of heart-shaped candy and started saying, "Hey, Sarah, the thing is, I like..." I knew where he was going. I liked Ben, but only as a friend. I couldn't let him confess his feelings for me, as that'd make everything awkward. So I interrupted him. "Ben, I like you too. You're a great friend. Can you help me with this?" Then I pointed at a section of my statue. Ben tried to say something, but I kept pretending to be busy with other matters. Then he just gave up and helped me in silence. After that, he didn't try to tell me how he felt again, and we carried on being friends as normal. It was best for everyone. High school ended, and all of our efforts led me and Ben to a top art college. I was so excited, but I was also afraid to open up and make friends with anyone again, as this hadn't worked out well for me before. Ben seemed to understand all of my feelings, so he was always with me. I was so grateful to have Ben there. He was an amazing friend, and it was great being around someone who shared the same passion for art as I did. It was sweet that Ben cared for me, but at times he did take it a little far. Some of the other boys at college liked me, but they did not even have a chance to come close to me. I found out that Ben intercepted any gifts and cards they tried to send me and threw them in the trash. He even stopped them on the street when they tried to approach me on my way home, then demanded them to have a talk with him first. He took it so serious that I thought I was his little daughter. One time, when this guy told him that he'd meet me at all costs, Ben insisted on staying at my house so he could look out for me. I found the whole thing hilarious, and so did my dad. I guess how Ben acted looked odd to other people, too. Like, one time when we were having lunch, this guy stopped in front of our table and asked, "Is he your boyfriend? If not, he has no right to act so clingy." To be honest, I didn't want to date anyone anyway. I didn't have time for boys. I wanted to focus on my art, so I grabbed Ben's hand and told the guy, "Yes, he does have the right, so you better beware of him." I could see Ben blushing and smiling. He didn't still like me, did he? The day of our final presentation arrived, and there were loads of talent agencies there to watch us. It could be considered as our very first interview. Recruiters were allowed to question us to make their employment decisions. It was so scary, but also exciting. Afterward, my lecturer told me that both I and Ben had received some great offers, including a company that wanted to hire the both of us. I immediately texted Ben to meet me on the college rooftop to celebrate. But when I saw him, I noticed that he looked sad. Okay, this made no sense. He should have been as excited as I was. I asked him, "What's wrong, Ben? We can still work together. I will confirm the deal, and I can't wait to work with you." But Ben sadly said, "Congrats, Sarah, but I'm so sad that I can't stay. You know, I always want to be with you, but I have my own dream to reach." His dream? I'd never thought to ask about his dream before. I'd just presumed it was the same as mine. Now I felt bad that I'd been so selfish toward him. Ben continued, "I got an offer from a museum in San Francisco. They said I could develop my idea for my project there. That's my dream, organizing my own art exhibitions, and I don't want to miss it. Could you come with me, Sarah?" The offer he'd received was amazing. They must have been extremely impressed with him. But as excited as I was for him, I wasn't sure about going with him. There was no company in San Fran that wanted me, but I had opportunities here. Ben could see through my feelings. He suddenly took my hands and said, "I love you, Sarah. You know that. Please give me a chance. I don't want us to be apart." I pulled my hands back. I can't, Ben. This is your dream, and you should go for it, but it isn't mine. I know you'll be successful, and you can come back one day and find me. I trailed off. Seeing my resolute attitude, Ben didn't say anything more, but just looked away. That afternoon, I realized we had to grow up from young dreamers and become warriors of our future. After all, the future looked bright, and I was excited to see where mine would take me. Hey, it's Sarah here. So my school and college days had come to an end. Now I was stepping out into the big, wide world and trying to get my first job as a plaster statue maker. Today was an exciting but nerve-wracking day for me, as I had a meeting with a famous fashion company. Apparently, they were impressed with my portfolio and thought I was perfect for the job, so I was eager to find out what it involved and how a plaster modeler like me would fit in. First off, wow, the building was massive. The foyer was full of modern furniture and abstract artwork. I sat on the couch and waited, noticing how everyone looked so stylish with their trendy outfits and funky hairstyles. I felt a bit out of place in the dress I'd found in the sale, but I tried telling myself that I was here for my talent and not for wearing expensive outfits. After a few minutes, a nice lady came and said that the director was ready to see me in the meeting room. As I followed her there, I felt my heart beating like crazy. I couldn't believe that I had the opportunity to work with such a big company. For a girl who just graduated, this was a really big deal. But as soon as I entered the room, my mood changed. You will not believe who was sitting in the meeting room. It was Noah and Claire, my old classmates. So, what, Noah was the director now? And he was the one who wanted to hire me? Was this maybe another sick joke or something? I thought my school dramas were behind me, but now I was face to face with two people who'd stabbed me in the back. Noah stood up and said, "Hi, Sarah. It's good to see you again. Is this a joke? Are you both trying to make fun of me again? For your information, I'm not that girl anymore, so don't even think about it," I interrupted him with anger. Noah looked confused. "This isn't a joke, Sarah. It was never in school, either. You're here because we know how talented you are." They were all liars. I trusted them once, but never again. I turned my back on them and was about to walk out the door when Claire stood up and said, "I think she meant me." She's still mad at me because I used her story for my collection without asking her. Oh, so Claire remembered how she used my story, as if it was a joke just to raise the value of her collection. Claire continued, "Sarah, please listen. I'm sorry I took your pictures for my project without asking you first. I was so focused on the project that I didn't notice the feelings of the people around me." I turned around and replied, "Well, making fun of others isn't really art, don't you think?" She shook her head and said, "No, that wasn't my intention at all. Your story was inspiring, and I just wanted everybody to know about it. But I get it now. It was wrong of me. Can you please forgive me?" This made me so mad. So I replied, "Do you think a simple sorry will make up for it? You humiliated me." Claire came towards me, took my hand, and said, "I know. Trust me, I've regretted it for years. I still regret it now." I looked right into her eyes and said, "You really did hurt me that day. You know that?" Claire replied, "I know. Please give me a chance to make it up." Okay, so maybe she was sorry. I mean, she looked like she meant it. Besides, this wasn't school anymore. I at least needed to hear what she had to say. So I smiled at her and said, "Okay." She looked so relieved, then she hugged me. I noticed Noah smiling too, so I said, "Don't think that I forgot about that Wonder Woman costume." At first he looked confused, then said, "Wait, Sarah, that wasn't me. I didn't give you the costume." "Wait, what? You didn't?" Noah nodded and continued, "Of course I didn't. Why would I ever do that to you? We are on the same boat. Did you forget?" Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. All this time and it wasn't him? I misunderstood him and the feeling of being betrayed had haunted me for years, but it was all Ashley. "So, now that's cleared up, can we talk about the project?" he asked. Blushing, I nodded. They started telling me about the project, and wow, it sounded amazing. I was totally blown away. Forget the usual skinny models in every fashion show, as they wanted me to create plaster statues that would show off the charm of the human body. Each statue would have a unique shape. Silk was the theme material for Claire's collection. She would work with me to create costumes that would suit each plaster statue. They offered me the job, and I said yes! This was really a big challenge for me, but I couldn't wait to make it happen. Claire and I threw ourselves into the project, and it wasn't long before we bonded over lunchtime takeouts and after-work coffees. I must admit, it was good having her around. I guess I missed her more than I realized. To my surprise, Noah was also pretty great. This may have been his family's company, but turns out he was a good boss. Whenever Claire and I couldn't agree on something, Noah would jump in and give us an even better option. He always had these crazy ideas that Claire and I would never have thought of. This one time, the three of us ended up working later than expected, so I volunteered to go and grab some food from the place around the corner. As I was walking, I heard Noah call my name. Turns out he wanted to keep me company. Then, when he saw me shivering, he took off his jacket and put it around my shoulders. My heart felt like it skipped a beat, and I could smell his warmth around me. I'd forgotten what a sweet guy he could be. Uh-oh. Was I crushing on him again? But then a few days later, something happened. The three of us were having lunch when suddenly Noah's phone, which was lying on the table, rang. I could see on the screen that it was Ashley. Noah picked up the phone. "Oh, hey, Ashley. Yes, okay, I'll be there in a minute." And then he hung up and said, "Sorry, ladies, I have to go now. See you tomorrow. Bye." And then rushed out of there. I immediately turned to Claire and asked, "Was that the Ashley who just called?" Claire nodded. "Yes, ma'am, the one and only. It's such a shame that a great guy like Noah has to marry an awful person like Ashley." Wait, what? Did Claire just say marry? I tried to keep a calm voice when I asked her. "They're getting married?" "When?" Claire replied. "I think in the fall or something. I'm not really sure. Noah doesn't talk much about it. He's always quiet when it comes to this topic." Oh, great. I'd fallen for him all over again, only to lose him to Ashley. Again. I felt so disappointed, but at least now I knew what I had to do. From now on, I'd keep my feelings hidden and concentrate on my work. No way was I getting on Ashley's bad side again. After a lot of hard work and effort, we completed the project on time. Not only that, but the exhibition was a major success. Claire's stunning outfits and my awesome sculptures worked so well together. Turns out we made a great team. Claire's costumes sold out, and she received loads of orders. As for me, my statues were auctioned off with sales far greater than expected. To congratulate us, Noah threw a party for our team at this swanky bar in town. It felt so good to let my hair down for once, as I'd been working so hard of late. We had a really great time. Everybody was gathering on a table and was teasing each other, making jokes, and just having fun. I probably should have slowed down on the cocktails, as I soon ended up pretty drunk. After a while, Noah sat down next to me and asked me, "So, apart from being a talented sculptor, do you have any other hobbies?" I replied, "Of course I do. Duh. I don't know," I laughed. He continued asking, "What about food? Any favorite dish? And what about pets? Do you like pets?" I laughed and replied, "Oh, wow! Is this an interview or something? What's with all these personal questions?" Noah smiled and answered, "I want to get to know more about you, as I find myself curious about you." I felt my face turn bright red. What did he mean by that? Did he maybe also have feelings for me? But then I quickly kicked all these ridiculous thoughts out of my head. He was engaged to Ashley, so he was just being nice. Noah gazed at me oddly, which confused me. I didn't know what to do or say, so I stood up and said quickly, I need to go to the restroom," but assumed I had too many drinks because I almost tripped. Noah held my hand and insisted on helping me. His hand felt so warm. I knew I should pull my hand away, but I just couldn't. To be honest, I just wanted to fall into his arms. Maybe it was the alcohol talking. The next morning, I woke up. What the? This wasn't my room. I was in this luxurious, very modern room. The kind you see in 5-star luxury hotels. Oh my God! Where was I? I looked down at my body and, phew, still had my clothes on. So nothing happened, right? I took a deep breath to calm myself down, and then quickly grabbed my purse, which was on a chair, and sneaked out of the room. Geez, this apartment was huge. Where was the damn door? When I was still struggling to find a way out, I bumped into Noah, who just stepped out of the bathroom. Why are you here?" I mumbled out. But then I looked around and spotted a big picture of him and his family. Oh, great. I'd spent the night at his place. Hi everyone, it's Sarah here. So I had the ultimate blast from the past when I went to a meeting and ended up coming face to face with my old classmates, Noah and Claire. After years, we eventually had the chance to clear up misunderstandings. I was too hasty in concluding that they were all monsters who caused my past suffering. We let the past stay in the past and did a great job together. After that, I found my relationships blossoming between them both. But while Claire's was a growing friendship, with Noah there was some definite chemistry there. But he was engaged to Ashley, so I tried to keep my feelings hidden. At least that was until the night of the party when I drank way too much. So here I was, in what must have been Noah's apartment. I was staring at him standing there in front of the bathroom. Before I could mumble out any sort of response, an angry girl burst in. Oh no, it was Ashley. She wasn't pleased that Noah was at home with a seemed-to-be drunk girl. He tried explaining to her that it wasn't what it looked like. That's when she took some photos from her purse and threw them on the floor. They were pictures of me and Noah from last night. There were some of us chatting at the table, one where we were laughing, and one of him helping me out of the bar and into his car. Oh my God, why did she have these pictures? Noah said he needed to change clothes first, then we could all talk it out. He led Ashley out of the room, but a few seconds later she stormed back in and yelled at me. "It's you again, Sarah. I know you seduced my fiancé." "It's not like that," I muttered out. "I was drunk, and he was just being kind. There is nothing between us." "These say otherwise." She pointed to the pictures. "You think that because your dad saved my life, that you're entitled to not only the same education as me, but my fiancé too? Well, you're not. You're nothing." She lunged at me and reached out to grab my hair. Luckily, Noah, who was pulling his t-shirt over his head, rushed into the room. He grabbed Ashley and pulled her away from me. "When I come over later, she better be gone," she screamed at him, before she stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I wanted to tell Noah how sorry I was, but I couldn't find the words. He took my hand and pulled me out of his apartment. We got into his car, and he drove me home in silence. When he pulled up outside of my place, he finally spoke. "Sarah, I'm really sorry about all this. Last night's a bit of a blur for me, but I can tell you this. Everything I did is my true feelings, because I love you. There's no one else like you. You're special, and I've always loved you, since high school. You feel the same way, right?" Oh my God! Noah had feelings for me too! So my mind wasn't messing with me. I knew it. For a minute, I was so happy to hear that. But then reality hit me. He was engaged to Ashley. I knew we couldn't be together, so I reluctantly said, "Noah, you're engaged to Ashley. You belong to somebody else. So we can't be together." Noah cut me off. I know. We're only engaged because it was our family's decision for business stuff. I don't love her, not like how I love you. Can you please wait for me? I will handle this." I was so confused. I was stuck in a love triangle that I never intended to be in. To be honest, I also had feelings for Noah, but I knew what kind of person Ashley was. If Noah left her for me, she would never stop trying to ruin my life. Sorry, Noah. I know what she's like. I still have the emotional scars from the last time she thought I was trying to steal you from her. I don't want to get involved in this drama with you and her. So please, let us just be friends." Noah was silent at first, but then he gave a solemn nod and said, "Okay, if that's what you wish." I got out of his car and watched him drive away. I'd made the best decision, right? I couldn't be with a guy who was engaged to someone else. After that, I buried myself in work. Only having Noah as my boss was not so easy, especially when Ashley started visiting him almost every day at work. Ugh! If watching her be all over Noah wasn't bad enough, I also had to endure her childish games. One time, she had 2 cups of coffee in her hand and accidentally spilled both of them on me and my desk. The coffee was so damn hot. Luckily, I didn't get burned. She feigned concerned, but I wasn't fooled. I knew that she'd done it on purpose. Then another time, when I went to the restroom, I caught her writing bad comments about me on the mirror with lipstick. I mean, seriously? I asked her why she was doing this, and she smirked and said, "You know why. Buckle up, as this is just the beginning." Then she laughed and went out of the restroom. Oh my God! How crazy she was! Turns out, she meant what she said. As a week later, I had a meeting with an important business partner. I was super nervous, so I went to my laptop to give my presentation one last scan through, and to my horror, the document had vanished. This made no sense, as it had been there last night before I went to bed. I'd triple-checked it. Somebody must have hacked my laptop. That's when I saw Ashley standing by the door with a scornful smile on her face. I instantly knew this was down to her. I whispered to Noah and Claire that I couldn't find the presentation on my laptop. They looked shocked, but Noah immediately explained to the partner that my laptop had a virus, so all the data had been deleted. So we needed to postpone the meeting. The partner looked furious and shouted at Noah, "Are you kidding me? A virus? I expected your company to be more professional, but clearly I was wrong. I hope you understand the importance of this exhibition." And then he left the meeting room. Oh my God, this was so embarrassing. It was my entire fault. I let the team down. And now we had to face consequences because of me. Could things even get worse? After that, Noah asked Claire to leave the room. Then he turned to me and said, "I know it's not your fault. Someone must have hacked your laptop. Don't worry, I will get to the bottom of this." It felt good knowing that he didn't blame me. He was such a sweet guy, which was exactly why I loved him. And worse still, I'd let him go so that Ashley wouldn't make my life a misery. But here she was, making my life one. Enough was enough. Ashley was a horrible person, and she didn't deserve a sweet guy like Noah. So before I stopped to think, I blurted out, "Noah, I need to tell you something. I love you too, and I think we should give ourselves a chance." Noah looked at me with surprised eyes, but after an agonizing wait of silence, he said, "Sarah, I'm really sorry. We can't. Ashley is the best choice for me. I hope you understand." His words hurt like crazy. How could he confess his love for me just a few days ago, and now tell me he wanted her, not me? Did he decide that his career was more important than love? But then, what did I expect? He was engaged. I felt like such a fool, so I nodded and said, "I understand." Then I rushed out of there. I needed to take my mind off everything. And luckily for me, a new project with Claire popped up, which involved Claire designing national costumes and me creating statues with poses to match. Plus, I got to design wheeled platforms so that the statues could move. This would be a big shot. I meant this idea was unique in the sculpture industry. One day I was waiting outside of the building for Claire to go get her car as we were going for dinner, when I heard someone call my name. I turned around, and to my surprise, I saw that it was Ben. "Sarah, it's so good to see you." He smiled. I stared at him in shock. "Wow, it's been so long. When did you come back? Why didn't you text me?" He smiled and said, "Well, I always knew I'd come back. Sarah, At that moment, Claire arrived. She smiled and looked out the car door to greet Ben. I regretted goodbye to him. So Ben and I switched numbers and arranged to meet up soon. It was great to have my best friend back here by my side. Claire grabbed my arm and said, "Ooh, who's he? He's very handsome." I laughed at her. "He's my friend Ben. So you like him, huh?" "Ah, his name is Ben. I think I have found the prince of my life. You have to help me, Sarah." I smiled and gave her an okay signal. She became really excited and couldn't stop asking about him during the meal. I thought they would become a cute couple. That weekend, I arranged to meet Ben at a restaurant. Ben was still very attentive and enthusiastic as before. It was so good to catch up with him, and we talked about our dream to one day open our own exhibition together. Then he said, "Do you remember our promise?" Of course I remembered it. We once promised to open an exhibition together. Then Ben continued, "My work in San Francisco had problems. Things didn't go well as I expected, but I've learned a lot. Now I'm confident enough to come back to find you and make our dream come true, but I need your help." I was so surprised by his suggestion. At the time, I was so busy with work that I wasn't sure how I'd manage both. But looking at Ben's face, I knew I couldn't turn him down. So after thinking for a while, I smiled at him and said, "Yes, of course. Let's make our dreams come true now." Okay, so combining both my job and working on this project with Ben was going far better than expected. I didn't tell anyone at work about my sideline project, though. I mean, they didn't affect each other or anything, but I still didn't think it would go down well with my colleagues. Then one evening, when I was around at Ben's working on the project, he turned to me and asked, "Do you remember my question? I'm still waiting for your answer." I could tell from the way he was looking at me that he meant the one after graduation when he'd asked to be my girlfriend. Wow, did this mean he still liked me, even after all this time? Ben is literally a lovebird, but what could I do? I myself am a lovebird too, spending my love to Noah all these years, even when he always had Ashley with him. I don't like Ben in that way, but I also don't want to lose him as a friend. It was too hard for me to say something now. Ben could see me feeling uncomfortable. He laughed and said, "It's okay, Sarah. Take your time. I can wait." Then we continued to discuss the project. Actually, I felt very guilty for not clearly rejecting him, and giving him false hope. But I didn't want to hurt him. He was my best friend, so we'd be okay, right? Hey, it's Sarah again. So things between Noah and I became complicated after I blurted out to him that I wanted to be with him and he completely shut me down. This wasn't what he'd said a few days before this, so now I was so confused. I tried to put all my focus into work, but then I reconnected with Ben, and turns out he still loved me. After I left Ben's house, I thought things over. Back at graduation, I couldn't properly determine what my feelings were for him. Now I realized that my heart didn't belong to him. It belonged to Noah. I knew how sensitive Ben was, and the last thing I wanted was for my rejection to upset him. There was only one thing for it. I'd find him a new girl to focus on. Someone sweet and funny. Yep, I was talking about Claire. She was perfect. I put my plan into action by inviting both Ben and Claire to go bowling. Then I showed up a little late so they'd have one-on-one time to get to know each other. My plan looked like it worked because when I arrived, Claire and Ben were drinking sodas and talking. Only when I joined them, I realized that it was Claire doing most of the chatting while Ben barely said a word but just politely forced his smile without looking in her eyes. He was just awkward meeting someone new, right? Afterward, Claire sent me dozens of messages saying how cute she thought Ben was and how well they got on. I figured that Ben just needed a little more time to get to know Claire. Then he'd see how perfect she was for him. Anyway, back to my Noah problems. Seeing him at work after my failed confession was hard. I tried to be normal around him, but every time I caught a glimpse of him, my heart ached. I tried avoiding him as much as possible, but I just kept bumping into him somehow. I was on my way home from work when my car stalled. I was about to call for help, but as I was on the phone, I noticed Noah's convertible car pulled up alongside me. Then he said, "Get in the car, I'll take you home." I was a bit confused, but I didn't want to be stuck there alone this late and waiting for hours. So I got into his car. At first, there was this super awkward silence. Noah just kept quiet and drove, but then he hesitated. "Sarah, I'm sorry about what happened. I never wanted to make you sad. I understand, Noah. You don't need to explain anything. You're an engaged man, so I was just being dumb." Another silence came between us. In my life, his car became the stuffiest place I'd ever been. He pulled up outside my house, I forced a smile, and mouthed thanks before I got out of his car to walk home. But it only took a few steps before a hand suddenly pulled me back. "Sarah, it's not like that. Actually," Noah was about to say more when suddenly a voice came from behind me. "Sarah, why are you so late? And who is this man?" It was Ben. In all the commotion, I'd completely forgotten we'd made plans for him to come around this evening to discuss the project. I replied, "He's my boss. My car broke down, so he kindly helped me out." Ben stared at Noah and said in an unfriendly voice, "Oh, thanks for taking my friend home. Now you can go." Then he pulled me forward. I just turned around and waved to Noah. Ben's attitude was so strange. He was normally very polite, but why was he rude to Noah? What was wrong with him? He was in a vile mood, and as the night went on, this only seemed to worsen. We had consistently conflicting opinions. I wanted to add creative and alternative ideas to the plaster statues, but Ben rejected all those ideas. I knew he was old-fashioned and was unsure about my creative suggestions, but he wouldn't even hear me out. My ideas don't make plaster art any less valuable. Instead, it makes them stand out, which could attract younger audiences. He sneered, then said, "Your views on plaster art have changed, and so have you." What? Why did he think that? I gave him an example to let him understand what I was doing, that in my company's upcoming project, the statues would be dressed like a real person, and even they would be able to move. Ben panicked and said, "Oh my God, it was an offense. If your statues are dressed in those costumes, how can people see the beauty of sculpture?" The more I tried to explain this to Ben, the angrier he got. Then he yelled at me, "Sarah, that boss and that damn company have changed you." I shouted back, "Why are you so stubborn?" Ben continued, "I don't think I need your help anymore. I'll do the project myself." Then he left. What? I couldn't believe this. I'd been working my butt off trying to juggle work and this project. Besides, he'd asked for my help in the first place. Ugh! I agreed to work with him just because I respect our friendship, and now what he said? Okay, it was fine. I was too tired and I didn't have time to go argue with him. After that, I spent all my time on the company's project with Claire. Meanwhile, I also heard from Claire that Ben's project had problems. It seemed he was having financial difficulties implementing the project. I felt a bit guilty because I promised to contribute money with him to do this project, but now it was his choice, so he had to deal with it himself. Fortunately, he now had Claire by his side, so I hoped she could help him through this difficult time. Finally, after months of plenty of sweat and tears, the launch day of the new collection arrived. Due to the success from the previous project, this fashion show was much more crowded, mostly fashion enthusiasts and local plaster lovers. Then the show started, the lights went out, and I held my breath as my statues moved along the catwalk. The light from the platform combined with the spotlight made them look like they were giving off an aura. It was such a success, and a huge number of orders were placed. Claire and I smiled happily together, so our efforts over the past few months had paid off. At the end of the show, Noah thanked the audience and the press. Then he invited me and Claire onto the stage and introduced us. He excitedly told everyone that the designer of the collection was Claire, and all these statues and the idea of making them move were all my own. Everyone was in awe, looked at me admiringly, and congratulated me. Receiving such compliments, it felt like I was on top of the world. Suddenly, there was a journalist who wanted to ask me some questions, and of course I agreed. I've received information that the idea about your statues are stolen, and I have evidence. Then he showed everyone photos of statues that looked exactly like my blueprints. So, could you please tell us if this is true or not? He asked. What? What was he asking? All of these statues were my own ideas. Everyone started talking. I heard some comments such as, "Oh, it's unbelievable. So much for her ideas being unique. And if that's true, are the costume ideas also stolen?" Then a series of flashes and microphones pointed at me and Claire. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to do. Suddenly I felt someone pulling on my hand. It was Noah. When we were out of the room, he said, "My driver will take you home. I have to get back to deal with this." "Noah, trust me. They are all my ideas. I'd never steal anyone else's." "Sarah, I know that. I will find out who's behind this." The news that I was the idea thief spread like wildfire, and each day, fresh calls came in to cancel their orders. This was awful. Claire and I had worked so hard on that project, and now it all seemed for nothing. Worse still, if this issue didn't get sorted soon, no one would ever want to work with either of us ever again. The company was also suffering. Their reputation had declined, along with their finances. That made me feel extremely guilty, even though I was just a victim of this vandalism. I just couldn't figure out how my blueprints were leaked, as only the people in our group knew about them. Could one of them betray us? I scratched my head thinking about this. I was desperate to know if Noah had any news about this, so I went to his office. As I walked to the door, I heard Claire's voice. "Don't press him this hard, please." Then Noah replied, "Ashley knows it was Ben who did this. She's certain Sarah was the one who revealed all the blueprints to him. If something isn't done about this, her family will withdraw their company shares, and I can't let that happen." I couldn't believe what I just heard. How painful it was when being stabbed in the back. It turns out Ben did it. I mentioned my ideas to him before, but I just said a little bit about it. How could he make an exact copy? I immediately texted Ben to ask to meet him at the coffee shop near my company. As soon as Ben arrived, he made a guilty face. Just waiting for him to sit down, I angrily looked at him and said, "Did you really do it?" He looked guilty and admitted that, when his project came to a standstill because he needed money, Ashley appeared and said she'd help with one condition. He had to help her ruin my project. As well as the money, he wanted me to realize that my crazy creations, well, as he called them, weren't good for my career. So he agreed to Ashley's demands. "I didn't do it just for my exhibition," Ben continued. "I want you to leave that company, leave Noah, and then we can start over." This wasn't for you to decide. I know you despise the direction I've chosen to take my artwork in, but that doesn't give you the right to do what you did. I trusted you, and you destroyed my career. And what for? For some money? "It wasn't like that, Sarah," he replied. "How did you get my blueprints?" I tried to control my anger and asked. I approached Claire," Ben said, falteringly. He took advantage of Claire's feelings and trust and dragged her into this whole mess. I couldn't control it anymore. I shouted, "You're a coward! Do you know that Claire is still begging for you, even though she knows you took advantage of her?" Ben looked quite shocked. He stammered, "Is that true? Why is she—" Then he had a guilty look on his face and said, "Please stop her. I don't want her to throw her career away because of me." I shrugged and said, "But it's fine for you to destroy mine. This is your doing, so go and handle it yourself." Then I immediately left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about what just happened. Turns out Ben wasn't the guy I thought he was, and I never wanted to talk to him ever again. I was even more surprised that Ashley was the one behind this. I felt so low. I had nothing left. I'd lost the man I loved, my promising career, and I'd been betrayed by my supposed best friend. I'd also introduced Claire to him and messed things up for her too. After the worst night's sleep ever, I woke up and knew what I needed to do.
So I went straight to Noah's office and resigned. After this incident, I was unable to continue working at the company. I really hoped that after I left, Ben and Claire wouldn't be held responsible anymore. Then I said, it was me. I revealed the detailed blueprint to Ben. Don't blame him. Blame me. His face turned red when he said, What? How could you? Unexpectedly, you dared to sell the company outright because of your lover? I have nothing more to say to you. Go out. His words were like sharp knives stabbing into my heart. I guess a part of me hoped he wouldn't believe me and wouldn't let me go, but turns out I was wrong. There was nothing left for me here now. As I walked out of his office, I stood helplessly against the wall, then burst into tears. I couldn't do anything more. So, I stopped crying, then went over to my desk and packed up my things. That night I lay in bed in a daze until I fell asleep. The next morning, my ringing phone woke me up. I couldn't believe what I saw. Hey, it's Sarah here with the final part of my story. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So in the last episode, I found out that Ben had betrayed me, and in doing so ruined my career. So I took the blame and left my job, but I had no idea what I was meant to do next. My ringing phone woke me up. What was going on? I drowsily reached for it, then saw tons of messages from my friends and colleagues. I skimmed through them, and to my surprise, they all included the same link. Okay, this was strange. I clicked on it and found that it was a video of Ben and Claire. I pressed play, and in it, a crying Claire admitted that she was the person who had revealed my design to Ben. And Ben said that led on by personal reasons, he'd slandered me for being a copycat. Both of them apologized to the company and to me. I scrolled down. There were thousands of comments below their video, and most of them were negative, calling them traitors and so on. I called Claire to check on her, but her phone was off. She was probably avoiding all of the horrible comments. I hoped she was with Ben now, and they could rely on each other to get through this difficult time. After hearing that Claire was begging for his fault, Ben must have realized that he was terribly wrong, then came to her to correct everything. So, the truth was out, but I didn't feel good about this. Instead, all I felt was sad. Noah thought I was capable of betraying him, when this whole vindictive plan had been Ashley's. At that point, I saw tens of messages and missed calls from Noah, but I didn't want to answer just to hear him feeling sorry for me. It hurted me so bad, thinking that when the incident happened, all he cared about was her demand and her family's shares in the company, and that I was nothing to him but a betrayer. My heart ached. Then suddenly there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Noah standing there. He was panting and his shirt was damp with sweat. What? Why are you here? I asked. As soon as seeing me, he hugged me tightly. What's wrong? I asked. After some seconds, he said, You didn't answer, so I was afraid something bad had happened. You were sad and I was so cruel, and I just smiled at him. See? I'm totally good. Then I asked him to come in. At least I should hide my feelings and treat him like a friend, right? We sat on the couch, and Noah kept staring at me. I joked, Is there anything on my face? He said seriously, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I watched the video this morning, and it's all my fault for not believing you. I replied, Yeah, that hurt, but you're the boss, so you did what you had to do. Without letting me finish my sentence, he continued, No, there was no excuse for not believing you. Ben texted me last night and told me everything. He said he loved you, but you don't feel the same, and this made him act like a jerk. So now, no one knew the truth, but for what? He had Ashley, and he was marrying her. I smiled at him and said, It's okay. It's all over. You should care about Ashley more than you thought. This might not happen if she didn't feel insecure that much about your relationship. You have Ashley, so take care of her. He was flustered and then tried to explain, Sarah, please hear me out. I want you. I always have. I only turned you down because Ashley threatened me. So it turned out that Ashley threatened to destroy my career and make my life a misery at all cost if he dared to break up with her. That's why I turned you down. I know she really means what she says, and I just want to keep you safe away from her. Little did I know that Ashley tried to wreck your life regardless, he said. Then he gave me a determined look and continued, Sarah, I tried to ignore my feelings for you, to please my family once before when we were in high school, and I almost lost you again for that damn family company. But now I realize that without you, everything is meaningless. Please forgive me. I couldn't believe this was happening. Finally, we could be together, right? We'd both wasted enough time, but could it really be that simple? He could see me hesitating and immediately grabbed my hand and insisted I go with him somewhere. I asked him where, but he just smiled, patted my head, and said I'd know soon enough. I was kind of confused, but looking at his determined eyes, I knew I could trust him. As we pulled up to this impressive mansion, I realized that I'd been here before, back at the party where Ashley humiliated me. This was her family's home. I was hesitant, but he assured me it'd be okay and led me inside. There I saw Mr. Adams sitting on the couch and reading the newspaper. I turned to Noah and whispered, "What are we doing here?" He looked right into my eyes and said, "Getting you the justice you deserve." Mr. Adams heard the noise and looked back, seeing me and Noah. He was kind of surprised. "Noah, are you here to find Ashley? She's still in her room. And is this lady—" "Yes, this is Sarah, the daughter of the fireman who saved Ashley's life." Mr. Adams gasped in surprise, then said, "Oh, it is you! How is your father?" I smiled politely and said, "It's nice to meet you. My dad is fine, thanks." Then he asked me some questions about my dad and my job. He was so surprised to know that I was working in Noah's company. Then Noah said, "Mr. Adams, I have something to say." And then he told him everything about how Ashley had teased me 5 years ago and the reason why I moved back to my previous school. Then he told him how she'd planned to ruin my career. Mr. Adams was furious. He immediately called Ashley to come downstairs. Ashley's face was priceless. When she stepped down and saw me sitting in her house, she muttered out, What are you doing here?" Mr. Adams told her to sit down, then said, "Tell me what you did to Sarah, now." She yelled back, "Dad, nothing." Then she turned to me, "First, you stole my fiancé, and now you're slandering me to my own father? You're such a liar." Mr. Adams angrily said, "Stop lying, Ashley. Noah told me everything, and I believe him. Sarah's father saved your life, and as a result of his injuries, he had to give up the job he loved. Yet you did this to his daughter? Why?" Ashley looked furious. It seemed that her dad had never scolded her before. She shouted, "Yes, I did everything, but she betrayed me first. I thought we were friends, but she tried to steal Noah from me back at school, and she's still trying to do it now, even though she knows we're engaged." At this moment, Noah spoke out. "It's all my fault, so stop blaming Sarah. Back then I didn't stand up for her, but I won't be that cowardly again." Ashley held back her tears. Honestly, I felt bad for her, so I motioned Noah to stop talking. He just held my hand tight and turned to Mr. Adams, then continued, "I didn't dare to confess my feelings because I was scared that you would withdraw your shares. But now I don't want to hide my love anymore. For me, the engagement was just a business thing. I don't love Ashley. Sarah is always the one I love, and I want to cancel the wedding. No matter what you do, Mr. Adams, I'll accept it." Mr. Adams sighed. "Sarah, on behalf of my daughter, I'm so sorry for what she did to you. Tomorrow, I'll organize a press conference to officially announce the truth to the public and vindicate you." Then he looked at Noah and continued, "And Noah, don't worry about the company. As for me, work is work, and it doesn't relate to personal affairs." Then he turned to Ashley. "Remember, Ashley, you can't force someone to love you because this will bring you nothing but pain and turn you into someone you don't want to be." The next day, the press conference was held, and the room was packed with journalists. Mr. Adams officially confirmed that Ben and Claire's confession video was true, and I was innocent. He also affirmed my talent. He said that he wouldn't investigate this more because Ben and Claire were also talented artists who made one bad lapse in judgment, and as a clear-sighted investor, he would keep facilitating young talented creators. He didn't mention anything about Ashley's fault, but then this was expected, as she was his daughter. On the way back home, I received a video message from Claire. Contrary to the complicated situation here, Claire and Ben were enjoying a trip on a remote island. Through all this mess, they'd found love, and I was so happy for them both. I did always say that given time, they'd make the perfect couple. Seeing how happy they were reminded me of my relationship with Noah. We loved each other, but couldn't be free to show it like they do. I avoided to face him, as technically he was still engaged to Ashley, and the last thing I wanted was to be a wrecker. Then one evening, Ashley messaged me saying, "I'm at Terrace Cafe. I have something to say to you. Don't keep me waiting." Ugh, what could she possibly want to say to me? I was so curious, though. So I went to meet her. I arrived to find her and Noah sitting at a table and chatting to each other. I was kind of worried, and my legs seemed to be stuck to the ground. I didn't dare to walk toward them. She called me out to let me see how they looked good together, didn't she? I was about to leave, but at that point, Noah saw me and he immediately came toward me and led me to the seat. Ashley said to me, "You see, we are back together." I should know how ridiculous she was before agreeing to come. Now I stuck myself in this humiliating situation. Suddenly, Ashley laughed out loud and said, "Just kidding, don't be so serious." Look, I'm sorry. I behaved badly and disappointed my father. So I've decided that you can have Noah. Then she smiled, but don't expect me to wish you happiness or anything. To my surprise, Noah turned me around to face him and said, "We are no longer engaged. Now I'm officially yours, Sarah, if you let me." I almost cried happy tears when Noah asked me, and I never thought that I finally could say yes to him right in front of my used-to-be enemy. 3 months later, everything returned to some sort of normal. Everyone in the company knew that Noah and I were dating, and they all were happy for us. I spent most of my time sculpting, and it was great to follow my passion. As for Ashley, news is she's doing a master's course in England. And as for Claire and Ben, well, their love continued to blossom so fast that after just months of being together, they announced their wedding. Noah came with me to the ceremony, but as soon as we got there, he had to rush off to solve some issues at the company. I was kind of disappointed, but I tried not to show it, as it was my best friend's wedding, and I was so happy for them both. Then Claire threw the bouquet, and as the belief goes, I wanted to be the one to catch it and marry next. We were all ready to leap for it, but then Claire turned back and walked away. We were so confused. What was she doing? Then she walked towards someone. It was Noah. Noah? He was back from work? She gave him the bouquet, and he immediately ran toward me. And to my surprise, he got down on one knee, handed me the bouquet, pulled out this amazing diamond ring, and said, "Sarah, I don't want to lose any more time due to my dumb mistakes. I want to protect you and spend my life with you. So what do you think? Will you marry me?" I couldn't believe my eyes. Noah had this whole thing planned. It was so romantic. I blushed and obviously said yes. Then to cheering and applause, we kissed. Now I'm engaged to the man of my dreams, and hopefully no more obstacles will get in the way of our love. But if they do, well then I say bring them on, as love conquers all.
Hey, it's Haley. So, my dreams of becoming a big star were finally starting to come true. Me and Phil had just performed at the Blue Moon Festival, and the crowd loved us. I was buzzing from the performance when Eric appeared. Ugh! He was the last person I wanted to talk to, but I didn't want Phil and him to end up fighting, so with reluctance, I agreed to hear Eric out. He smiled at me and said, "Haley, it's so good to see you. You look fantastic." I grumbled, "Just cut to the chase. I don't have time." He then continued, "I know it must have been hard for you. I'm sorry for that." I folded my arms and rolled my eyes. I was so mad. It's been over a year, and he still has never had the decency to explain to me what went wrong between us. We didn't even have a proper breakup. He just went off with that Clara girl. I couldn't take it anymore, so I blurted out, "Just stop! I don't need this. Instead, why don't you just tell me why you cheated on me?" Eric fell silent and just stared at the ground. I let out a sigh and continued, "See? You can't even excuse yourself. Eric, you're nothing more than a coward, and you don't deserve me." Then I left him standing there alone and went to the green room. Upon seeing me walking through the door, Phil hurried over to me and asked if I was okay. I forced a smile and told him everything was fine. I sat down in the corner of the room and tried to hold back my tears. I guess I wasn't fine after all. Instead, seeing Eric had restirred all of my feelings and emotions toward him. Then a staff member appeared in front of me with a huge bouquet of purple peonies. She told me that they'd been sent in for me. So I thanked her and eagerly read the note. But just like the last bunch that I'd received at the studio, there was no name on the card. Just a message. This one read, "Haley, reach for the skies and continue to dazzle like the true star you are." Suddenly, Eric popped into my mind. Could he be the one who sent these flowers? I mean, except for my family, only he knew that purple peonies were my favorite. And why here? Why now? This bouquet of peonies appeared again when Eric was around, but that would make no sense. We're over, and he'd even cheated on me with Clara, who he was still with. Ugh, my mind was messing with me. On the journey home, I stared out of the window and daydreamed about Eric, the flowers, and why he just stood there in silence. I knew I shouldn't waste my time with him, as I had better things to do. But it was so hard. Following on from the success of the festival, Phil and I were mentioned online, alongside other famous artists. It was kinda cool, but also kinda awkward seeing our faces on the internet. I guess it'd take some getting used to. Phil suggested we should take advantage of this publicity and start working on our first album right away. He also thought it'd be a good idea for me to input my creativity into it by having a go at writing songs. I'd never written a song before, so I was unsure. Phil was the composer, not me. But then Phil said something that made me change my mind. "Haley, I know you're still upset about everything that happened with Eric, so why don't you try to channel that hurt into your music? The most moving songs come from the heart." Phil was right. I'd been bottling up my emotions for so long, maybe it was time I let them out. So, we started working on the album. We didn't want to rush it, so the plan was to release a few singles to keep the fans interested and eager for more, while we spent the next year working on it. Then one day, Swing Club contacted us and asked us to perform at their 20th anniversary party. This was so exciting. I owed so much to Swing Club. They also informed us that Eric had agreed to come too, and that he was bringing Clara along. Well, I guess it was inevitable. On the plus side, Anna and Kurt told me they were going. Yay! It would be awesome to see them. Being back at my old school was weird, but in a good way. Suddenly, I was hit with all those memories. The last time I was here, I was just a teenager with these crazy big dreams of becoming a singer. And now look at me. My dreams had finally come true. Then we walked into the Swing Club rehearsal room. Wow, it hadn't changed at all. I instantly had this warm feeling. It felt like I was home. I saw all the younger students had gathered around Eric and Clara and were asking for their autographs. Then I spotted some of my former classmates. They were standing at the other end of the room and giving Eric and Clara dirty looks, as they were the ones who knew exactly what went on between me and Eric back then. Phil and I went over to them, and as soon as they saw us, the girls, Anna among them, screamed with joy and immediately ran towards us, and we all did a big group hug. Kurt and the boys were standing behind and greeted us too. It was so great to see them all again. Turns out, some goofy love from my friends was just what I needed. Eric spotted us and walked over with a huge smile on his face. Kurt then said out loud, "Let's stand somewhere else, guys. There's a strong scent of cheater around here. Makes me want to puke." Then he walked off, and everyone followed. Not knowing what to do, I just stood there, staring at Eric. To be honest, I felt a little bit bad for him. Anna seemed to figure out what I was thinking, as she dragged me along and said, "Let's go, Haley. This jerk's only getting what he deserves." I knew my friends meant well, but I didn't mean to make anyone pick sides. Okay, I knew what Eric did to me wasn't great. Still, I didn't want to see him being treated like this. Anyway, I knew I couldn't think like this now, as I had a performance to prepare for. The anniversary concert was amazing. It felt so good being back on the stage, in the place where it all began. Afterward, I went outside and sat down on a bench in the garden to catch some fresh air. It was a bit chilly, and I started shivering. Suddenly, I felt someone put a jacket over my shoulders and say, "You never know how to take care of yourself, huh?" I turned around and saw that it was Eric. Our eyes met, and it felt awkward. I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, so I gave him back his jacket and walked past him. But suddenly, he grabbed my arm and said, "Please wait. Can we talk for a minute?" I replied, "There's nothing to talk about." He was about to say something when suddenly Clara showed up and said, "Well, well, what do we have here? If you keep clinging onto her like that, others might think you're having an affair with her." I was startled and quickly yanked my arm away, then stepped back. Clara continued, "That's better now. You know, Haley, he has a girlfriend, so you shouldn't be so flirty." Eric grabbed my hand and tried dragging me away. Ugh, all these physical contacts were giving me mixed feelings. Why couldn't he and his annoying girlfriend just leave me alone? Then luckily, Phil showed up and said, "Hey, jerk, let her go." Eric glared angrily back at Phil and said, "Excuse me, but who are you to say that?" Then Phil pulled me back to his side, and the two of them had a stare-off. Clara, who was clearly annoyed that no one was paying her any attention, looked at Eric and said in an ironic voice, "Babe, they're superstars now. We shouldn't mess with them." And then she tried to lock arms with him, but Eric just pushed her away. That made her even more frustrated. So she turned to me and Phil and continued, "Congratulations on your big success. You both worked hard." Or maybe it was just Phil. I mean, without his songs, you'd be nothing. Irritated, I mumbled, "Watch your mouth, Clara." But she didn't care, and turned to Phil saying, "Oh, Phil, you should have let me sing your songs. I bet they would have been #1 on Billboard, or even won Song of the Year. But no, you've wasted them on her. What a pity." Oh God, I hated her. Why did she always have to act like such a diva? I was going to give her a piece of my mind when suddenly Eric spoke up. "Don't be ridiculous. Haley is really talented, and her voice skills are perfect." Then Phil added, "Haley is beginning to compose some pretty awesome songs. Also, her voice complements my music perfectly, while you two only get attention because of your dating rumors." Well, Phil's last comment left Eric and Clara speechless. Then Phil led me inside. Clara just flipped her hair and said, "Let's go, babe," and walked away. But Eric didn't follow her. It was all so confusing. Why had he stood up for me against Clara? She was his girlfriend, right? So why would he treat her like that in front of us? Something was up, definitely, but I had no time to let it bother my mind. It's best to stay away from them, I guessed. The next day, Phil and I headed back to LA to continue our work. For months, Dean had been talking about hosting a mini show for us, and finally the plan was coming together. And the show would be called Haley and Phil, Our Journey Begins. It was exciting, as this was our first mini show ever. We rehearsed day and night for it, hoping to bring flawless performances to our fans. The day of the mini show arrived swiftly, and everything was going great as planned. But then, there was a small problem. There was nobody else backstage to help me zip my dress. Oh no, this was really urgent. I had to get on stage right now. Then Dean appeared to see where I was, so I awkwardly asked him for help. As he zipped up my dress, a camera flashed. What was that? Did somebody just secretly take a picture of me? I turned to Dean and gave him an anxious look. Then he ran outside to see who it was. But the corridor was empty. Hey, it's Haley here again. So, as you've known, Anna has told the whole world the truth about Eric and me. Now, everyone knew that he chose fame over me, and then played with my heart. A lot was going on, and I was so confused. So after a heavy night, I went for a walk to clear my head. And who should I see sleeping in front of Daystar Records but Eric? Even though Eric had just broken my heart again, I couldn't bear seeing him like this. So when he asked to have a talk with me, I softly said, "Let's get you out of here first." I helped Eric walk to the nearby park, and we sat on a bench hidden away in the corner to avoid people's eyes. Eric was still half asleep with his head between his hands, so I went to grab us some coffees. I bought him a cup of latte. How pathetic! After all the pain that he gave me, I still remembered every little fact about him, such as this one, about how he hated black coffee. So I couldn't help but let out a bitter smile thinking about it. I sat down next to Eric, handed him the coffee, and said, "Here, drink it. Then you'll be sober enough to say whatever you feel you need to." Eric took the coffee, but he started talking in a rush, as if he feared I was going to just leave. "Haley, I'm so sorry. I've been so foolish living under the control of others, while I should have protected you." I didn't expect him to start off like that right away. I didn't know what to say. Eric seemed to notice my silence, so he forced a laugh to erase the tense atmosphere and carried on. "How did I even get here while being so wasted?"
Perhaps it's because my head is always full of you. Haley, I know nothing I do could ever make it all up for you anymore. I don't know what to do. I've run out of energy to live like this. I just want to go back to being a normal, happy teenager who just simply loves music.
Okay, this was strange, as I'd never seen Eric like this before. It's like his whole world had just collapsed at his feet. He has been defeated. I couldn't keep up my cold facade anymore, so in a soft voice I replied, "Eric, you're a strong man. You can get through this and make it right." He looked a bit brighter as he saw me talking to him again, so I continued. "I know we viewed LA as this promised dreamland, but maybe the reality of it is different. It's ruthless out here, but I can honestly say that singing and making music with Phil during this past year has been the happiest time of my life. Eric, I don't know if you share the same feelings, but it seems like LA has turned you into someone you're not and erased the flame in your eyes." Eric looked sad as he sighed out,
Maybe it has.
Whoa, his words surprised me. What happened to the optimistic boy who believed nothing was impossible? The one who always picked me up every time I was lost and upset? That's when I realized he needed my help more than ever in this moment. So I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Remember that music is our happy place, not our burden. When things are at their hardest for me, I turn to music. So we should never let other things ruin this pure passion of ours. Let's just put aside all the dramas and whatever's between us. I truly hope you will soon find the real you again. Make it worth it, Eric, because I don't think your 16-year-old self would have wanted you to end up like this." I could tell that my words had hit home. He sat up straight and looked far away with determination in his eyes. I'd said all I needed to say, so I gave him an encouraging smile and bid him goodbye before leaving. "Take care, Eric. I hope to read good news about you soon." That conversation to me was a good closure for our relationship. It's officially over now, no matter what the truth was. I didn't want to be bothered anymore. I've made my decision. Life must go on, and I'd rather put my heart and soul into my music. But then, news of Eric came sooner than I expected, and I'm not sure if it was good or bad. I was having dinner alone at home and channel hopping when I came across an entertainment news on TV that was talking about Eric. The anchor delivered the news that was just in that Eric wanted to terminate the contract with his company. There was even a rumor that during a meeting, he punched his manager, Will. Not only that, but Eric also accused his company of interfering in his private life and forcing him to fake a relationship with Clara. I was so shocked that I dropped my bowl of salad. If he dared to let this out in public, then it must have been the truth, right? Whoa, exposing his company like this was an extremely risky move, as they were a powerful force. Now what would he do? A few days later, Eric showed up at Daystar Records. I thought he was there to see me, but he said he needed to talk to Phil and wanted me to hear it too. I was confused. What did Eric have to say to Phil? And why did he want me to be a part of it? Eric looked exhausted, and I could see the dark circles under his eyes. He seemed hesitant, as if he didn't know where to begin. Finally, he started telling Phil and me that he wanted to terminate the contract with his company, but he needed Phil's help. Turns out, when Eric let his company know about his decision, they threatened him that if he left them, they would destroy his career path, and every song he had performed would belong to them. It meant that Eric would have to start again at the very beginning to continue following his passion for music. Wow, I knew those people were ruthless, but this was cruel. Still, I was confused as to why Eric was seeking out Phil's help. But then Eric turned to Phil and said,
"I was hoping that you'd be able to help, seeing as you composed some of my songs."
What? Phil had written songs for Eric? No one had ever told me about this. Eric continued,
"Plus, with your family's influence on the industry, my company probably won't be able to abuse their power anymore. Look, what I'm trying to say is, I know I've messed up, and I've been a jerk to you, but the truth is, I respect everything you and your family have done for the music industry. So, I've come to you as a fellow musician, asking if you can help me get copyright for those songs.
I sat there open-mouthed. Turns out, Phil is the musician who composed some of Eric's hit songs under his stage name. In fact, Phil comes from a family that has a strong position in this industry. His mum is a famous singer, and his dad is a well-known producer. But he never mentioned it because he wanted to earn recognition from people on his own merits. I already knew that Phil also composed music for other artists, but I had no idea that he'd written some of Eric's hit songs. What a mysterious genius! With reluctance, Phil replied,
Eric, I'm sorry, but it's out of my hands, as the copyright of all those songs belonged to the record label the moment I signed the contract.
Eric couldn't hide his sad look, as he thanked Phil and said that he would figure another way out. But then he turned to me and asked if we could talk. I led him into the room next door. Eric sat down next to me and buried his head in his hands.
I'm so sorry, Haley. I've been a coward. Fame turned me into someone I don't want to be, and now I'm trying to put it right. I was so concerned with my career that I'd agreed to Will's ludicrous demands.
He looked at me with sad eyes, then continued.
I naively believed him when he said I only needed to pretend to date Clara for a short time. A week turned into another week, then a month, and there's no excuse for how I treated you. I lost true love for fake fame, and I will be forever regretful of this.
As I listened to Eric, I didn't feel angry toward him anymore. Instead, I sympathized with him. Will manipulated him. He was nothing but a puppet for him to control as he saw fit. But there was one thing I couldn't figure out, so I asked Eric, after the party and the incident with Dean's wife Jane, why did you just vanish like that? He took my hand and said,
Clara was jealous, so she hired people to stalk you, and one of them took that photo of you and Dean. Then Clara showed it to Jane to cause a fuss. I knew she was behind it, so I confronted her. Only, she seemed proud of her actions. She told me if I didn't cut all contact with you, she'd share that picture on the internet, and she'd make it her mission to turn the world against you.
Sighing, I said, Eric, you should have been honest with me. He said,
I know. I'm sorry, Haley. It wasn't just Clara. It was Will, too. He told me that he would do anything in his power to destroy your career if I continued to see you. Besides, I thought you'd be better off without me. All I've done is caused you pain, and unintentionally damage your career, when all I ever set out to do was protect you.
I was touched, but angry at Eric at the same time by what he told me. I had no clue that Eric had to bear all those pressures alone, just to protect me. He had even been hitted by Kurt. I choked, trying to speak up. Idiot! They can start whatever ridiculous rumors they like about me, but they can never threaten my career. But Eric forced a smile.
I know. You're an unstoppable force. I'm glad you finally know the whole truth. I hope one day you can find a way to forgive me.
It felt good to have cleared the air, but so much had happened between us, and I wasn't ready to move on from that. So I hugged him, wished him the best, and told him that I needed time. The most important thing for Eric right now was to escape from his evil company's control, and I wanted to help him do this if I could. Will was a big name in the industry, and he had a lot of powerful connections, so leaving wouldn't be easy for Eric, as Will would go out of his way to make sure that no other companies would work with him again. Eric and I parted on good terms, and I wished him all the best. Now, it was time for me to focus on myself. Well, that was the plan. But then about a week after that, I was on my way to an event I was performing at, and scrolling through my phone when I saw there was breaking news regarding Eric.